Welcome to the Triple Political Breakdown. How's it going? How's your day been? We didn't have an episode on Monday, but we are back at it again. And today is going to be another breakdown on recent things that have been taking place for current events. So let's break down some of the stuff that has been going on right now. As always, you guys can watch the full video version on the Roku app at Pod Nation TV. And if you're listening to the podcast, rate it 5 stars. As always, we're here to push the conversation. We're here to push the discussion. And the motto of the podcast will continuously be political solutions without political bias. And that's what we're here to do. Now, let's talk about some of the things that have been taking place since, as of right now, of recording this episode. I might just drop it a day later on Tuesday and then drop a different episode for the upcoming Thursday. But first things first, let's start off with Israel and Palestine. Israel expressed dissatisfaction with the ceasefire terms accepted by Hamas, vowing to continue military operations in Rafah. Meanwhile, Hamas accepted a ceasefire and hostage deal proposed by Qatar and Egypt, leading to celebrations in Gaza. Talks are ongoing, focusing on prisoner releases and Gaza's reconstruction amidst conflicting views within Israel's leadership and pressure to prioritize hostage return. Now, I'm going to kind of go over everything that's happened since last time you guys listened to an episode. And it's kind of crazy. And again, the conversation I will continuously have about Israel losing support has not dwindled by any means. And it's kind of crazy how things kind of played out. Next is Hamas in Palestinian ceasefire negotiations resisted further concessions to Israel. Despite talks, Israel continued military strikes in Rafah, Gaza, and threatened a major assault, accusing Hamas of using negotiations as a pretext for invasion. This has exasperated a humanitarian crisis in Rafah, prompting calls for an international intervention and resulting in significant casualties on both sides. We have to understand, as people who are looking from the outside looking in, that yeah, these reports definitely paint a certain light, but there may be information we don't know. So always keep that in the back of your head, looking at Israel thinking, why does it look like you're not trying to achieve peace? The United Nations General Assembly voted to grant Palestine new rights and privileges and urged the Security Council to reconsider Palestine's request for full membership. The resolution, backed by 143 votes, opposed by 9, with 25 abstentions. That's a weird word. They basically abstain from voting. Reaffirms Palestine's status as a non-member observer state without full UN membership, with the U.S. and Israel voting against it. Makes sense. U.S. is a close ally with Israel. But that is quite interesting that how this is kind of unfolding right in front of our eyes. Israel initiated strikes in eastern Rafah after warning 100,000 residents to evacuate, viewing Rafah as a key Hamas stronghold. The U.S. and allies oppose Israel's ground offensive, citing the humanitarian crisis. So the UN seems like they're ready to kind of accept, or at the very least, give certain legitimacy of Palestine. Right now, if you guys don't know, Palestine is trying to work out a deal where they officially create their own Palestinian state. Israel seems like they're not trying to adhere to that. And also, this seems like from recent conversations, if you haven't been paying attention, that Israel kind of doesn't care what the United Nations say, basically dismissing it to an extent, despite the UN not having any real authority, but being backed by so many of their allies. And Israel, as of right now, doing what they've been doing in terms of the strikes, despite peace talks, it again paints Israel in a very negative light. Israel took control of Gaza's side of the Rafah crossing with Egypt, raising concerns about aid flow to Gaza amid bringing in tanks to that area. And the U.S. announced a potential halt in supplying bombs to Israel if it launches a full-scale invasion of Rafah and Gaza. The Pentagon stalled a bomb shipment to Israel last week amid investigation into Israel's compliance with U.S. and international law regarding civilian protections and humanitarian aid delivery. Battles continue between Hamas and Israel forces in eastern Rafah now that it seems like that's what they're trying to take control of. Crazy lead up of events. Like, that is an understatement with what has been taking place for Israel in particular. The whole discourse, the whole outlook of Israel has completely changed from beginning to end. At the beginning, Israel seemed to have, for the most part, 70% of the support of the people after the October 7th attacks. But since then, Israel has been getting less and less support across the world. Obviously, we know that Palestine support and protests have been going on continuously in America. I mean, does it say much in terms of the discourse in large? Not really, because most of these are just ignorant college students. But they're outrage, the outlook in general is a personification of what Israel is showcasing to the world. And with peace talks going on, you continuously doing your strikes, you continuously becoming an aggressor, and you're basically not budging in bridging peace despite wanting to retrieve the hostages. It makes us think that Israel, what are you doing? Do you really want peace? I think that is a fair question to ask at this point. Another thing I want to bring up is something in regards to mental health. Now, there's a kind of like a article that took place. Let me read you some of the stuff that I gained from it. Why is this happening? The social psychologist Jonathan Hatt points to smartphones and the algorithms that draw kids away from healthy play and into dangerous addictive thought loops. No, his critics say, the real problem is a grim social landscape of social shootings, poverty, and global warming, or academic pressure, or insufficient health care. A group of researchers in Britain now propose another, at least partial explanation. We talk about mental disorders so much. I covered this notion in a story The Times published today. These are all quotes I'm reading from an article. This hypothesis is called prevalence inflation. It holds that our society has become so saturated with discussion of mental health that young people may interpret mild transient suffering as symptoms of a mental disorder. Now, there's a lot to unpack, and you can go read the article yourself, but it brings up very interesting points. You can kind of tell which side is advocating for what based on how things are getting presented, right? The whole aspect of social media and smartphones being the reason why mental health has been going up has definitely been a talking point of like a right-leaning individual. The aspects of school shootings, poverty, global warming, academic pressure, healthcare, that being a reason for health going up is probably more left leaning. In my opinion, the left leaning argument is dog water and terrible. It makes no sense because we've had violence for a long time. So there's really, in a safer society, our society right now is supposed to be safer. That shouldn't equate to mental health going up. It has to be something else. It has to be something and related to how we're doing things today that differs from past assessments of how we lived our lives. And there's two prospects of that I think make a lot of sense. And one, in part, due to social media, part of the conversation it should be, and cell phones, but in part, the prevalence inflation theory also plays into that. So this is what I mean. Ultimately, when it comes down to understanding, people nowadays have been basically not what's the best word? They have been fed information by information and information again. They've been given so much things in terms of information that a lot of people, based off their current experience and their current level of understanding of the world, can't rationalize why the world it is today. Living in ignorance will ultimately not, I would argue, make you less mentally compromised because you don't have a so many layers or so many targets of information, both in the morally good and morally bad. But for the most part, it's probably morally bad information that's getting fed to you, right? So getting fed a lot of negative information without having the understanding of the world can be very mentally taxing. That's one. Two, the interactions you may encounter on social media can also be very bad, right? It won't be genuine connections that bridges the gap of human connectivity. It won't bridge the amount of care and love and emotion that you may want. You are interacting with people, but there's something missing between the two. There's not that true self. There's that true feeling a connectivity between you and the individual that you are conversing with online. These people are not going to be true friends at the end of the day. They're not going to be true family. You can disappear and they won't care at all, like at all. They won't even come to mind through their daily lives. So you having these false interactions, these false relationships online cannot help navigate your mental well-being. You are not getting true love and care from the people that you should be getting it from. You're getting like a substitute version that doesn't fill the hole that may be in your heart. So that's another thing. And the third thing is the constant communication of trying to understand mental illness has been a problem. I do agree to that because nowadays everybody believes that they're mentally unwell. Now, with these new terminologies and these new ways of being, in terms of being a different type of individual, it automatically is a self diagnosis of you being mentally unwell. Depression being a thing, obviously, being lonely, just being maybe even potentially suicidal. Those emotions can be real, those feelings can be real, but there are times where it's overdiagnosed. One, you shouldn't be self-diagnosing yourself in the first place, but two, when you already believe that you're mentally compromised, there may be a sense of what's the best word, a sense of non-care, a sense of unwillingness to get you out of what you're going through. You think you need a outside measure to take care of the mental and unwellness that you are experiencing. I mean, I would argue that there are different things you could have done, and I've probably had a podcast episode talking about it, but other routes that people probably will go to is medication, therapy, or maybe they watch a whole slew of motivation videos. Right then and there, they believe, right when you're trying to find treatment, you automatically believe you have an illness. So, by you trying to get treatment of the illness that you think you have, at that point, you're going to be stuck in a loop. And unless you feel, because it's all a feeling, because it's usually self diagnosis, unless with you feeling this way, the only way for you to get past it is you don't feel this way. But for the most part, it could just be a situation where you're just lacking something. And a lot of those times, in my personal opinion, what you can be lacking is experience, perspective, love. The things that matter the most to humans is a connection, it's family, it's friends. We are social creatures. What a lot of these people are missing are things that we are losing in today's climate. If you think you're mentally unwell, you think other foreign entities are going to be able to make you feel better. But in reality, you as an individual, not having that companionship, not having that connection is going to cause these situations. Now, there are other circumstances that can make you feel unwell, of course. Like if you don't have family and friends, or maybe sometimes there are, I think not often, but maybe there are times where you do have family and friends nearby and they help, but maybe you're not truly connecting with them. Maybe you're not opening up to with them. Maybe you're not hanging out with them enough. Yes, you have them, but are you really trying to create a connection? And the other part about it that to help is you yourself. What do you want? How can these people help you get you what you want? all of what we see and what we view on these social media platforms and what we're told when it comes to the American dream too, it's people having unrealistic expectations on who they should be and not living up to that. That also can play a part into this. So there's a lot of things that go into mental unwellness nowadays. And I do think a lot of it plays into technology and information and not having certain connections. Like, I think all of these are part of the conversation, but you self-diagnosing yourself and you finding a solution from alternative means, I just don't think will be the answer. Next, we got TikTok as they sue the US government. TikTok, the popular social media video app, has sued the US government over a new law signed by President Biden that could effectively ban the app if its Chinese owner, ByteDance, does not sell TikTok US operations. TikTok to TikTok's US operation. So the US version of TikTok selling that in particular. TikTok argues that the law violates the First Amendment rights to free speech as it would silence the 170 million Americans who use the platform. TikTok and ByteDance have been trying to address security concerns since 2019, proposing a deal that would involve Oracle handling data and monitoring content. However, the government determined this agreement insufficient and insisted on divestment. TikTok and ByteDance contest the government's national security argument and are seeking a court order to block the enforcement of the new law. Legal experts believe TikTok has a strong case, with some questioning the constitutionality of the law under the First Amendment. TikTok's massive popularity and value, driven by its algorithm, make it an attractive acquisition target despite potential challenges in divestment. Now, I've talked about TikTok in length. And although I understand ByteDance as a potential threat, a security risk, I have criticized the United States in how they are handling the situation, because a proposal was offered in Oracle, a proposal where all US data will be put on a cloud software or a cloud infrastructure with Oracle that only the US can obtain and touch, and the ByteDance and China will not be able to touch this. That's what they were working on, and they just kind of scrapped the idea, and there was no explanation on why. And all of a sudden, they want to sell it. It makes me think that there is a potential ulterior motive. My English has been bad today. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. I need to lock in. It makes me think that there's an ulterior motive regarding the US and the government, that there is a potential financial incentive on selling TikTok. So I've been iffy on this situation for a while. I think there's legitimate arguments at the very least on both sides. Now, with TikTok suing the US, now things are a bit interesting due to the First Amendment. People have a false assumption on what the First Amendment provides people. They tend to think that private corporations abide the First Amendment the same as the U.S. government. And the First Amendment typically, or most specifically, applies for the U.S. government not infringing on your freedom of speech. TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, they can infringe on your freedom of speech as long as they want. They're private corporations. So they don't work under the same rules. But this is an example of the U.S. government technically infringing on your freedom of speech using a social media platform that allows your voice to be heard. Now, that's why I hear what the legal experts are saying, and I think that, yeah, I think they actually do have a case, because the US government has to provide tangible proof, in my opinion, that there is realistic concern of national security risk for this to take place. Because if they can't provide that concern, if they can't provide that evidence, what it looks like is that the US government is trying to take away a social media platform that allows your freedom of speech. That is what it looks like from perception, right? And I don't necessarily think that is a wrong thing to say. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think That is the incorrect way to look at things as of right now. Yeah, there are alternative means, but just because there are alternative means such as YouTube and Instagram, that doesn't mean that the US government can shut down other means due to it. So I'm curious to see how the US and the government is going to be able to wiggle their way around this. I'm curious to see what argument they can make. And I do think they're just going to need better evidence because I watched the Senate hearing and what they said I got, but at the same time, I don't think anything that they said was tangible. I think there were interesting bits of information that you might be able to allude to something, but I don't think they're tangible, not even close. So we'll see how everything kind of plays out, but I do think there's something legitimate behind this. Next, we got the Joe Biden asylum policy proposal. The Department of Homeland Security has proposed a change to the asylum process in the United States, aiming to streamline security assessments. Under the new proposal, asylum officers would assess whether asylum seekers pose a national security risk earlier in the process, potentially disqualifying them from staying in the country. Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas emphasized the goal of quickly identifying and removing individuals presenting security risks. The proposal, subject to public comment and review, targets individuals with serious crime histories or ties to terrorist activity. The administration plans to finalize the expedited process by this year's end. This moves come and increased pressure on the Biden administration to address border crossings with ongoing discussions about further executive actions. This is very interesting. This is something you probably would expect from someone leaning Republican. And the fact that this move is being made, it makes me think, is Joe Biden trying to reach out the more moderate voters? Because more moderate voters also have a lot of concern regarding immigration as of late. And this kind of plays into a better immigration process by taking away security risks, as we spoke about in length in terms of immigrants coming in and the distribution of fentanyl in America, of course. I think Joe Biden ultimately has been getting a bad rap in terms of his immigration policies. I think the reason why Donald Trump is kind of saved from this argument, and I'll talk about it in length in a future podcast episode, is because of COVID. COVID allowed him to kind of shut down the border. But I think if the COVID didn't happen, there would be a lot of immigrants coming into the country regardless. So I think Donald Trump kind of gets a pass for something that wasn't really his doing. That's what I personally think. But I digress. Ultimately, this is something that the Republicans probably should be in favor of, and we'll see how this kind of plays out. The last thing is that the Senate passed an aviation safety consumer bill. The U.S. Senate passed a comprehensive aviation bill aimed at enhancing aviation safety and passengers' protection. Valued at $105 billion over 5 years, the bill reauthorizes the Federal Aviation Administration and includes provisions to address various aviation concerns. These include prohibiting airlines from charging fees for families to sit together. Crazy. Charging a fee for families to sit together. Mandating 25-hour cockpit recording devices. Strong, respect it. And deploying advanced airport surface technology to prevent collisions. Also respect it. The bill also adds flights at Washington National Airport, extends the acceptance period for airline vouchers, and raises civil penalties for consumer violations. However, it does not raise the pilot retirement age to 67. Additionally, the bill aims to address air traffic controller shortages, enhance National Transport Safety Board staffing. It encourages drone adoption and extends government counter-drone authority. The bill is expected to pass through the House of Representatives. It looks like a good bill to me. I mean, that's what I think at the very least. It looks like a good bill to me that is being signed with aviation, obviously with airports. Getting a lot of interesting negativity as of recently. You know, I'm sure people have heard of like that one door that opened. I feel like there are a few crashes that have taken place recently as well. And a lot of videos on TikTok with like passengers being unruly, right? But I mean, everything from what it sounds like looks good to me. And of course, the drone technology increasing in value will be huge. They're also working on, I don't know if it's part of this bill, but I've heard that the US is definitely working on increasing its AI technology as well and implementing it a lot in military warfare. A lot of y'all who are more anti-war won't like that, but if you're pro America being the strongest country in the world, that's something we need to acquire ASAP. So that is all we got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry for the late episode. I hope you guys have a good day. Rate the podcast 5 stars if you enjoyed the information that I'm giving you. If you guys want to at any point reach out to me, you can on my website, www.purplepoliticalbreakdown.com. Hope you guys enjoy. You all have a good one. Take care and peace.